So are you looking to produce professional sounding acoustic guitar tracks at home? The kind that sound like they were recorded in a pro studio with a top engineer? I'm not just talking about demo quality good, but real pro level tracks that can get you noticed with mixes like this. Hey guys, welcome back. I'm Eddie Martinez, and today I'm going to share the tips and tricks that I used to produce the track you just heard. Check it out. So if you're a home studio musician like me, then you know how fun and rewarding the experience can be when things go right. And you probably also know how frustrating it could be when things just don't come across the way you had hoped. If that's the case, let's talk. So obviously, home studios are not designed or built like professional recording facilities, but there's a few things you can do that can definitely help make your rooms sound a lot better. And I'm talking about room treatment. Sound absorbing panels and bass traps can do wonders to help mellow out and mitigate the ambience in your room. I've done this and it works flawlessly. It really does, and it doesn't cost a lot of money. And trust me, your recordings and your mixes will thank you. First of all, you want to find a guitar that plays well. Something that stays in tune, doesn't have any fret buzz, and that's very comfortable to play. Borrow one if you have to. The next thing is make sure it's got fresh strings on it. For the recording, I use this guitar. It's my Martin HD28, which is a beautiful dreadnought guitar that just sounds wonderful, and I love this guitar, especially with new strings. The next thing is your guitar pick. I used a Fender Medium for my recordings, and actually I do that for anything I do pretty much. It's my go-to pick, a Fender Medium. But find what works best for you. A thin pick produces a light, airy, percussive type of tone, which may work well for your mix. A heavy pick is a darker tone and it's stronger sounding, so it definitely generates more volume. But experiment to figure out what's best for your song. So now let's talk microphones. As you know, YouTube is full of videos out there comparing all different types of mics at different price points. There's also a ton of videos on miking techniques. But to keep this video short and sweet, I'm just going to share the two microphones and the two techniques that I used to produce those tracks. To begin, let me make sure it's in focus here, I used an AKG 414 TL2 microphone, which is a large diaphragm microphone. It's very versatile. It's got different pickup patterns on the front, and on the back it's got the roll-off as well as the pad for loud instruments. And it's just a wonderful, smooth sounding microphone. I really like this, and I used this one. The next one I used was the Neumann KM84. Where is it? There it is. Neumann KM84 microphone. These are both out of production. But the cool thing about this microphone is that you can unscrew the capsule at the top and gently pull it out, and then you have the ability to work with other capsules, like add an Omni or a cardioid with a bass roll-off. I think you can even get these available through AKG as replacement capsules, but you got to have the modular system first. But excellent microphone. Again, if you look these up, you'll see that, these are industry standard microphones. But work with what you have and what you can afford. Borrow if you have to. The next thing is make sure that if you have one microphone, that you at least try different techniques, different distances, to just kind of give your mix a little bit different dimension and personality if you're going to use the same microphone for all the guitar parts. So that's it. Let's move on. So now let's talk mic preamps. Now, I'm fortunate enough through the years to have acquired a lot of equipment. I've sold a lot of stuff, so by all means, I'm not this wealthy guy that just owns all this good equipment. It's taken me a while to get there. But the ones that I really enjoy using a lot are my Manley dual mono tube preamp. It's a very smooth sounding preamp that just sounds wonderful with different options on it. As you can see, it doesn't have any EQ or roll-offs on it, so you have to make sure that you've got it right at the source, or use the roll-offs on the microphone. The next one is my Universal Audio 6176 tube pre. Not only is that a tube preamp as well, but it also has EQ and an 1176 type compressor. And you can run it with the compressor, without it, and I've done that a couple of times here in this video, which I'll talk about when I show you what I did for the different techniques. And so then I end up running everything into my Apollo X6 interface, which I run with Pro Tools. And that just seems to be a workflow that really works well for me. So I recorded a total of 3 guitar parts over 6 tracks using the following workflow. With the first guitar, I recorded that in stereo using a spaced pair miking technique. And basically I put the 414 about 8 inches off the 12th fret, and then the KM84 about 8 inches off of the bridge. And then I just made sure that those two were about 3 times apart, which would be about 24 inches, to prevent any type of phasing issues. And then I ran those into my Manley dual mono tube preamp with no EQs and no roll-offs. For the second guitar part, I recorded that in mono using a single point miking technique where I used the KM84, the Neumann, off the neck, right about the 14th or 12th fret, and that was about 8 inches out as well. And I recorded that directly into the Universal Audio tube preamp with a little bit of compression. And then I went ahead and double tracked that onto tracks 3 and 4. And so for the last track, I ended up recording that again in a single point miking technique with the KM84 right off the 12th fret, about 8 inches off the guitar, and that went into the Universal Audio preamp. This time there was no compression, but I did capo the guitar on the 5th fret in order to get a different voicing and kind of articulate the strums a little bit differently. And then I recorded those onto tracks 5 and 6 as a double track. Okay, so now we have the Pro Tools session open where I'll just walk us through the different steps of what I did to create this track. So to begin, let me just play back a little bit of the song for reference. Here we go. Okay, so the first thing that I do whenever I create any session is I create a tempo map. And I oftentimes like to do that using a tambourine. And that serves a couple of purposes, but let me play it for you first. Here we go. Okay, so you can hear it as the count that leads us into the song, and then obviously I kept it all the way through because it works. But the main reason I like a tambourine is because to my ears, it just sounds more musical than the strict sound of a metronome. And so I prefer the tambourine. It's got the swing and it just sounds more natural. Sometimes I'll use a hi-hat, but it's something that works really well and it's very musical and just kind of puts you in the mood for when you're recording your tracks. The second purpose of it is that if there's any blank spots in your song, like where the guitar stops and then it comes back in, and maybe you have a keyboard pad that's playing between the breaks, or there's a break in the song, you have something that's constant, that's walking you through those blank spots so that you know exactly when to come right back in. So that's what I use it for. And then of course in the mixdown, you just remove it from the blank spot and it sounds perfect. So the next thing is the backing track. The backing track that I used is this right here. Let me start it from this point. So the purpose of the backing track for me serves a couple of purposes, actually. The first one is going to be obvious, that it helps to fill out the track with instruments. I now have bass and drums and keyboards. But the second thing is, as an engineer, it helps to calibrate your ears so that when you go to record your part, you try to aim to make it sound as good as the virtual instruments, because they're always perfect, right? They always sound good. The drums are always consistent. Everything is always perfect from the virtual instruments. They never change. That's not the same about me, right? Every day I wake up, I feel different, right? So it's that kind of thing where you just want to make sure that you're going to be in line with the quality of those backing tracks. So that's why I always like to use them, is for reference. But maybe your song doesn't have any backing tracks in it, but it's just one of those things that it's nice to calibrate your ears somehow. Maybe you listen to some of your favorite artists before you record your tracks and just try to make sure that the quality of what you record is in line. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and walk us through the acoustic guitar tracks. To begin, Guitar 1 was recorded in stereo, and this is what it sounds like with all the effects. So I'll turn off the reverb and I'll go ahead and bypass all the plugins, and this is what it sounds like now. Okay, so not much different. I'm definitely a firm believer of less is more, keep it simple, try to get it right at the source. So anytime I do a plugin, I just want it to enhance what's already there and not completely transform it. So the plugins that I like to use is the tape saturation by Universal Audio. It's the Studer. And I just went with the factory default, kept it really simple. And then I moved into a little bit of the Neve EQ. I, brought up an acoustic guitar patch, and then I just modify some of the things in there. But I usually try to get the patch to sound as close to what I want as possible. Sometimes it takes a little while to scroll through them, but once you find your favorites, you'll kind of know which ones are your go-to. And then I applied a little bit of the Fairchild compressor, and that just kind of gives it a little bit of glue. And then I bust that off into the Capitol Chambers reverb, which just sounds beautiful to me. It's a really lush sounding reverb. And that's it. That takes care of the first track. For the second one, where I did the strums, here's what it sounds like with all the effects first. And here's what it sounds like with the effects bypassed. So what I'm doing for this track is I'm recording each guitar part in mono, right? I'm recording two different parts that are playing the same exact thing, and then I copy them onto a stereo track, and then it just keeps everything together, and it enables me to use like one set of plugins for both channels equally. So that's what I did for the strums, and that's what you heard just now. So as I move on to the next, well, actually, let me walk you through. That was the tape saturation there on the strums, as well as a little bit of the Pro Q3 EQ, just to kind of clean up some of the low end and the highs. And then I ran that into one of my favorite delays, the Echo Boy Jr., for a little bit of 1/4 inch delay. And then I roll off a little bit of the lows and the highs so that it sits nice in the mix and doesn't compete with the other guitars. And no reverb. I'm using the delay as the ambience. And then on the stereo, the last stereo guitars, I double tracked those as well and did the same thing. I copied them onto a stereo track. And this is where I capoed the guitar on the 5th fret. And this is what that sounds like. So now let me turn off the reverb, bypass the plugins, and this is what that sounds like. So you can hear that I didn't always play it that good. I kind of, on some cases I strummed and on the other guitar I didn't. And so it kind of created that back and forth, but it works. It works in the mix. I wasn't trying to do that on purpose. It was just, I don't think I played it as well as I could have. And it was kind of a nice accident, right? Where, hey, I'm not really playing the same exact strums, but that was kind of cool, right? It bounced back and forth, so I kept it. And so what I did for this track here is I went ahead and used the tape saturation followed by, again, the FabFilter Pro Q3 EQ. And then I just brought up one of their patches that's under Dynamics and under Instruments and, Acoustic Guitar Control and Excitement. There you have it. And that's what I used. And it sounded good, and it just made it sound distinct enough to where it played nice with the other guitars in the mix. And then I went ahead and bust that off to the EMT 250 reverb, where I brought up clean space, and that was it. I kept it simple, and that's how I treated each of the guitars. For the master bus, I went ahead and put in the Ampex 2-track tape emulation because, again, I'm going with the mindset that I'm recording from 24 tracks on the Studer down to 2 tracks onto the Ampex, and then I'm going to master the mix. So from this 2-track tape, I go to the mastering processor, which is the Master Desk by Brainworks. And this is kind of your complete, mastering in a box, if you will, because it has the compression, the EQ, and what gives you that stereo width to make your mixes sound bigger. And I just brought up a preset called Gentle and Wide, and then I just usually end up tweaking some of the EQs if they're too strong. I just kind of dial them back a little bit, just, season to taste. And that's it. And that's the mix that you guys hear. So when you hear this track, those are all the ingredients. So now let me play the track for you guys with everything in it. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this video on recording acoustic guitars at home. If you did, please hit the like and subscribe button. If you're new to the channel, check out some of the other videos. And leave comments, ask questions, put them down in the comments below, and I'll do what I can to get back to you. So until next time, I'm Eddie Martinez. Thanks for watching.